Well, hey, man, John, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I'm looking forward to delving into your life. I appreciate it.
Sounds good, Jim.
So let's begin our journey into your world as a runner, as a visionary, as an author by asking you this 5 years ago, this pandemic changed our lives in so many ways. How did you get through that era and how has it affected the way that you live life today?
Dude, well, that's actually a great place to start because, the pandemic was a major turning point in the lives of so many people in this country, in this world, and, I'm being one of them. At the start of the pandemic, I had a job that, was a good, comfortable job. I was working with a company in the health insurance space, and when the pandemic hit, I got sent to work from home, and, my immediate reaction was like, oh God, how long is this going to go for? It was kind of a feeling of impending doom when I got that message to go work from home. And, you continue to do the work from home thing for a couple months before I got laid off. And what ended up happening is that it left me with way, way, way too much free time without anything constructive to put my time and efforts towards. So a lot of that just went to drinking, doing coke, and playing video games. And, so that became my like normal average every day was playing Call of Duty for multiple hours a day while, having no regard for any responsibilities because I didn't really have any. After being unemployed for 6 months, I moved back in with my mom and stepdad briefly before I got offered a job up in Connecticut. So moved up to Connecticut with brief stays in Albany and Syracuse, and uh, you know, was up around there, working, but still following the same patterns of drinking and cocaine usage, but now in a state where I knew absolutely nobody and felt extremely socially secluded, both because I didn't have a strong base of people around me and because being there during pandemic times made meeting people extremely difficult. And so, while I was up there, I reached my absolute breaking point that allowed me the bottom point to grow from. And, if it weren't for the pandemic happening, who knows, maybe I just would have kept living a life of, mild comfort in New Jersey for the rest of my life and would have never moved up to Connecticut and reached that absolute breaking point that I found. Um, it was a really dark time for me from a health and from a social standpoint, but it gave me the breaking point I needed to see that I had the opportunity to take control of my life and start making changes to put myself in a better position. And one of those was a move to Florida, which I did in April of 2022. And then, 6 months after that, my life just completely flipped on its head with the experience that I document in the book.
So, talk to me a little bit about exactly what you do on a daily basis right now. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids at a grade school. They're 12 years old. It's career day. And the kid in the back of the room that's always curious is like, hey, what do you do for a living? What's your answer?
Yeah. So I take people who are interested in physical health and teach them everything I know. I take people who live average lives and help them become extraordinary in the physical sense.
So, when you were 12 years old, what was your dream life? What was your dream gig?
Yeah. Well, so I was a baseball player as a kid. And so that was the only thing that was on my mind from the time that I was a kid until I had to stop playing baseball in high school due to an injury at 18. And, everything was kind of directed towards that of living that dream of trying to go towards being a baseball player. And, it's funny that you picked out 12 because when I was 12 was actually when I really got my start into the physical fitness space. Up until that point, I'd been playing baseball, I'd been playing soccer, I'd been playing basketball. Happy 11/11, by the way. Um, I don't know if it is in Kansas, but it is here. Um, yeah, so I was playing sports and I thought I was an athlete. But my grade school did presidential fitness award testing during gym class. And, that test, it's a nationwide test where they test you in push-ups, sit-ups, mile run, and a couple other things. And I thought I was an athlete. I thought I was going to crush it. And I completely missed the mark. Um, and I go to my PE teacher and I'm like, Mrs. Phillips, I don't know what happened, but I'm an athlete. I deserve that Presidential Fitness Award. Can you let me retest? And she says, yeah, well, I got a month until I need to submit the results. So every day from that point forward, I'd go home and I'd run and I'd do push-ups and I'd do sit-ups. And by the time it came for me to retest, I was able to nail it. And so that really jump-started my love for physical fitness and what I could do to enhance myself outside of the normal confines of gym class and the sports that I played. And so that really became a major part of my life from that point forward. I really hit a jumping point when I got to college and started to lift pretty much every day. And even through my dark times, the alcohol and coke years, decades that I faced, I would still go to the gym nearly every day. And it was the one thing that really kept me anchored into myself and into living a somewhat sane life. Uh, and then, when I had my experience that I documented in the book, it all just got ramped up a total different notch.
So when you were a kid, what were these foundational seeds that were planted that gave you this proclivity towards health and fitness and eventually being somebody that was going to coach and change lives? What were those early things that were planted in you that made you who you are today?
Well, really, what it is, Joe, is I think that there's a huge potential that I recognized during that transitional process of doing the Presidential Fitness Award and conquering that test that showed me that we have the ability to make yourself better than you were previously. And it's something that when I started to get into the weight room and started to recognize the amount of change that I was able to make, it really just opened my eyes to the ability that we all have to put yourself in a better position, right? So like one of the big things that I tell my clients, and I work with clients all over the spectrum in terms of age, in terms of athletic capability. It doesn't matter where you start, it matters that you start because you don't get to where I am without decades and decades of hard work. And you don't get to, you know, being somebody who, has a high body fat percentage and doesn't have the adequate muscle mass on their body without years and years of not putting in the right work. So it's what you can do to reverse that for yourself and start to make those positive changes, one little change at a time, to set yourself on the right path to be where you want to be.
So who's been that hero, that inspirational force for you that's consistently made you feel like you can do it and be where you are today?
You know, through my life, I wouldn't say that there was any one in particular. As a kid, it was the desire to be a baseball player and the desire to achieve on the field. As I got to college, uh, I started to go to the gym just because it was the one outlet that I had. I didn't have a baseball field to hop onto anymore. I didn't have, any sort of competition from that standpoint, but I did have the ability to go into the gym and push myself regularly. And around that time, I started to consume a lot of uh, old Arnold Schwarzenegger videos and stuff like that. And I was actually just telling one of my clients today about how when I was in college, I used to have Arnold Schwarzenegger posters on my wall, and girls would come up to my room and be like, "Is he gay?" No, no, just admiring the male physique.
Yeah,
Nothing gay about it.
yeah.
Um, and so it just became something where I wanted to see myself as that type of human being, as the type of human being to really maximize their potential. And so, I started chasing, yeah, the bodybuilding, the powerlifting type goals for all of my 20s, but that was riddled with so many things that were taking me off of that path, bad habits, so on and so forth, and never really got to the point where, I was competing on stage or, doing anything really with that. But when I had my transformational life experience in 2022, allowed me the clarity to step back and ask myself how I actually wanted to proceed with my health and fitness because I'd been pursuing powerlifting for so long that I just reached a plateau point. I wasn't progressing with any of my lifts. And I realized that it would either take me, doing steroids you know, or I just wasn't going to progress very much there. So I had to take a step back and analyze how I really wanted to attack my physical fitness from that point forward. And it took like a year until I got really clear on the ability that I had to test myself physically and push myself physically with challenges such as Spartan races, triathlons, things of that nature. And I was listening to David Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me, in October and November of 2022. And when I listened to that book, it really just lit up something inside me. Are you familiar with Goggins?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. So yeah, so he, for any listeners who aren't familiar, he was somebody who at 24 found himself 100 pounds overweight, had tried to get into the Air Force, but didn't make it because of sickle cell trait. So he fell out of the Air Force. He found himself 100 pounds overweight for what the Navy SEALs were looking for, lost 100 pounds in 3 months to qualify for the SEALs, then ended up failing SEAL training twice before persevering through the third time on two broken shins plus a hole in his heart to finish, and has turned himself into an ultramarathon runner, set the world pull-up record, is a smoke jumper, and just does incredible things time and time again to really push what he believes is possible for himself, to show us all that there's more within us than we're willing to give. And, so just listening to his book for the first time, it really just highlighted the fact that I wasn't doing enough. At that time, I had taken a step back from powerlifting and I was going to the gym or riding my bike like 7 days a week, but I just wasn't really pushing myself, wasn't really setting goals. And there was a Spartan race that was here in Florida, about 2 hours from where I live. And I'd been toying around with the idea for a couple months, hoping that a few friends would join me and we could do the race together. And at that point, I hadn't run regularly since I was a freshman in college. And so we're 12 years removed from the last real running experience that I have. But I say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm in pretty good shape. There's a race, it's a half marathon. It's double the length of anything that I've ever run. I haven't run in 12 years, but it's possible for me to just go out and do this. So let me just go out and do this. And so I did. And I signed up for the open division, the non-competitive division, but I finished in the top 5% of that category. And so that really just highlighted how well positioned I was from a physical standpoint to really attack something like that if I gave it my all. And so it was an eye-opening experience that coincided with my detachment completely from alcohol, and gave me the clarity to decide how I wanted to live my life. And so I've just attacked physical fitness in an extreme way since then. Doing multiple Spartan races, doing strongman competitions, completing ultra marathons, and just trying to inspire other people to take action. And it's incredible to see those seeds being planted and see what that does for other people in my life.
So ultimately, at the end of the day, what gets you up every day to maintain? Because doing what you're doing means that you have to be on top of it. You're always evolving and you always have to pass that on to the clients. So what is that motivation to take care of yourself and the clients every day?
Well, yeah, Joe, so really the big thing is that I had this major life change, with the psilocybin mushrooms back 3 years ago. And when I had that, I got very clear on how I wanted to live my life and how I wanted to show up for people. And one of those big things was that I got a message to help people. And so I was really confused on how to do that for the first year following receiving that message. And the first path I started to go down was to write my book, because I knew that by sharing my story, sharing, the mental unraveling that I went through and how it allowed me to escape so many years of demons to live a good, connected life, that by sharing my story, I could help people to see that they have potential within themselves that they're not giving themselves credit for. And to get that message in front of as many people as possible, I need to live with that conviction that I received in that moment with as much fervor as I can. And so, you know, doing what I do from a physical standpoint only helps to solidify the the realizations that I had, that I did have so much more within myself than I was giving. And by focusing and committing myself to something that seems way far out of range for anything I would have conceived of myself back 3 years ago, it just continues to solidify the change that I made in those moments. and continue to work towards being that person that decided that I wanted to be day after day.
So you may have already answered this, but if you can meet one person on the planet right now that you find absolutely inspirational, who would it be?
Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. He and I share a birthday, which is just a funny thing,
Yeah.
December 2nd. But uh, he's somebody who reached the absolute pinnacle of his profession. And did you watch his documentary on Netflix?
I was going to, and I never did. I heard a lot of things about it, but I haven't
Yeah.
watched it yet.
Yeah. So, he reached the pinnacle of his sport. And there was a moment for him where he said, okay, now what? You know, I achieved what everybody dreams of achieving. I won the MVP, I won the Super Bowl, I won the Super Bowl MVP. Now what? There has to be more to life. And so he kind of went through a major process for himself where he had to get clear on what his role actually is in this world. And I feel like the combination of where he's at physically, mentally, spiritually, would be something that would be a really valuable conversation for me to have. And I would hope for him to have as well, having somebody who's also, in the psychedelic realm, also in the physical realm, and can share a lot of common experiences and common understanding there.
So let me ask you this. If you were to run into your 18-year-old version in a dream tonight, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the choices you've made, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Stop drinking,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Period. It's something where, I look back at all the years that I spent, drinking, nearly every day for over a decade. And, I talk to so many people, clients, potential clients who, will say something to me like, oh, like I only drink, you know, I get drunk like once a weekend. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're getting drunk once a weekend, right? Let's say it's even just like four drinks, right? You're taking in an average of 200 calories a drink. So 800 calories from that. Plus alcohol decreases your testosterone. It makes your sleep terrible that night plus the night following. It makes your anxiety go crazy. And then, there's a number of other health things that, go along with that. But every single time that I picked up a bottle, I was setting myself back further and further and further from being the person that I wanted to be. And it was all in the name of social validation, in the name of trying to fit in. And if I simply had the courage to be myself through that time, who knows how high the pyramid would have been built to this point. Instead, I had a decade of not doing anything really productive with my life. And so, if I could go back to that 18-year-old self, 18-year-old self that had his first mushroom trip at 18 and saw the baseball player version of myself die and realized that I needed to create a new identity. But that identity that I created for myself was a partier, someone who, you know, was always down to have a good time and just wanted people around me to have fun. And that's all that I cared about for years and years and years. And so, I would love to be able to talk to that version of myself and set myself straight. And, in a way, I feel like I have. Um, my my brother is 12 years older than me. And when I was a freshman in college, my brother had been 6 months sober from crystal meth and was leaving a Narcotics Anonymous meeting when he got hit from behind by an SUV. He got thrown off the bike and into the intersection, but the guy in the SUV ran him back over and dragged him under the car for 3/4 of a mile as skin, muscle, bone was ripped from his body. Eventually, the driver stopped. They got out, they dragged him out from under the car, dumped him between parked cars, and with several fractured vertebrae, no muscle on the right side of his body, his skull scraped down to the bone, he stood up and was able to walk and get help from a boy who was walking his dog. Now, that happened. He was in the hospital for 2 months. He was bedridden at home for another 2 months. Um, he got addicted to painkillers and then heroin and then back to rehab. And, he never really had a handle on life until much later, until I was in my late 20s. And, through all of that, I saw this happen, but it never quite hit me that I was following the same path that my brother was. And my nephew, my sister's son, is 12 years younger than me. And when he was 6 years old and I was 18, there was a picture of us around Christmas where we're both wearing Santa hats. We both have beer bottles and we're both tilting them back. His was empty, but mine wasn't. And I thought it was a funny picture to have with a 6-year-old kid. And if that was all it was, then that was all it was. But it wasn't, right? That was more of uh, an underlying message that I was sending him to him that partying was, the best way to get out socially and the best use of your time, and that drinking and getting girls and everything like that was, kind of the spice of life. And when I had my awakening in 2022, one of the biggest changes that I made was my change in messaging to him. And, at that time, it probably took, like 6 months, a year for us to get back to the type of relationship that we had previously and that we have currently in terms of closeness, because all the things that he was involved in and he would talk to me about and get validation from me as his uncle were in that partying aspect. And so I had to change my messaging to him and just be like, dude, that's not the way to live life. Like there's so much more out there. And when I did my second Spartan race, which is, now a year and a half removed from my awakening point, I was driving home, and I had finished in the top half of the competitive division in the second race that I did. And I got a text from him that just said, Johnny, I'm really proud of you seeing where you were a year ago to now. Like, what you're doing is so badass and I'm inspired. And, it just made me break down crying because I recognized just how bad of an influence I had been at that earlier stage in my life, and how I had changed in time to help him live a better life. And, now he's 20 years old and he doesn't party the way that he did in high school. And he's removed himself from the most destructive members of his friend group. And he's actually visiting me, coming into town from Jersey to St. Petersburg here in 2 days. And he's going to be doing a 5K with me on Sunday. And so, I'm so proud of the change that he was able to make, and I'm so proud of the change that I was able to make sure that he didn't follow the same path that my brother did and I did, and that he has so much more opportunity to be a good, productive person.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone who's going to change the world. I think I'm somebody who had an experience that was so profound, and so earth-shattering to me, that is comfortable enough with talking about who I was and the things that I went through and the problems that I faced that so many people face who aren't comfortable talking about it, who will be able to share his story and connect with people on a major way, and help to bring psychedelics more mainstream, and also help people to make major positive changes in their life.
So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of your book, which is called Get Your Mindset is Your Reality, or they want to reach out, they want to hire you, they have questions, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, man. So for my book, Amazon.com, you might have heard of it. The audio book will be on there probably in about 2 weeks. It's a 10-day review process, and I'm just finalizing the final pieces of that now. So I'm hoping that that'll be ready in about 2 weeks, the audio book. But the physical book's on there as well. It's on Kindle. And if you'd like to get in contact with me, the best way is through Instagram. My Instagram is at Johnny B, JohnnieBe. I am launching my virtual coaching soon. So if you'd like to reach out to me and be one of the first virtual clients that I work with, you can find me on there. I'd be happy to work with you.
Right on, man. This has been great, John. Thank you for your story. Thank you for the grit. Thank you for opening up. I really appreciate it, man.
Of course, Joe.
Thank you.